Hello and welcome to another edition of the Paranormal Concept Show. I'm your host Paul Rook, and as always we are joined by the amazingly wonderful Kerry Greenaway.
Hello.
And the amazingly brilliant Richard Clements.
Hi there.
Hello, how are you guys doing?
You've been upgraded, Rich.
I've been upgraded, yes.
You must have been a really good boy. You've done something good. What have you done?
I've done something good the last week, yeah.
You sent the research over, that's fine.
Yeah, I sent the research over, yeah, it's about as good as thing I can do, yeah.
Yeah, so this is down to Richard, everybody. I just putting that one out there.
So it's all Richard's fault tonight.
Yeah.
Have you been up to much this week, Richard?
Not really. I was sort of, as I was telling you guys off air, I've decided to take up a new hobby of magnet fishing, and I'm in the process of actually buying the equipment to actually do it. You know, I mean, well, it's a big toys. It's like a big boy's toy, and I thought, why not? Let's get out there in the fresh air and see what I can get.
Well, that's it. I mean, as soon as you've got it, you know, I'm going to be free. We go out magnet fishing. I've never seen a magnet fish, so I'm really interested to see that.
Yeah, okay, yeah, we'll do.
Yeah, awesome. See how many magnets we can fish for.
Yeah,
Excellent.
that's right.
And Kerry, what have you been up to this week?
Oh, me, I've been playing with my pretty crystals, getting lots of new stock in, and working. Because we're retail Christmas, everybody. It's come around so quick, and I'm going to be saying it every week. Do you know it's retail? I work in retail, and it's Christmas, and it's manic.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's kicked off already, is it?
So all I'm saying is, right, if you're out shopping, please have some tolerance. We have had our staffing, every single company that I know of in retail has cut their staff back. So we were on minimum staff. We're on the same level, if not more level of work. So patience and tolerance and all those things come into play. Plus also we are still in a pandemic. So please continue to sanitize and wear your face masks whilst in store for the lovely colleagues out there across the country, on the world, should I say, who are trying to do the best they can under really challenging circumstances, lack of staff and double the workload because we're now taking on the workload for everybody else. And that's so it's not just my store, but every company that I can think of in retail has had the same situation. So, yeah, please consider the staff when you're shopping for your Christmas goodies. We are doing our best with what we've got. That's all I'm saying to the public out there.
So basically, for the layman, at the end of the day, everyone in retail are absolutely knackered, run off their feet. Mm-hmm. And if you cause any problems, you're liable to need the items surgically removed from offices.
Well, obviously, I can't say that bit, you know.
No, but you're in retail, so you can't say that. I'm not.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it has its all hands on deck in my store in particular.
Yeah.
Is all I was saying. I know talk to other girls in other shops across the high street, and they're in the same situation. The hours got cut. A lot of the times they haven't even got Christmas temps in to help out. So it is really challenging working in that environment. And hospitality, I will say this as well. I know for the hospitality industry, it's just as challenging for them guys. And we've had huge problems with supply lines still. We're starting to get stock through, but nowhere near the levels we normally would have at this time of year. So it is a very challenging situation still out there. And we are still having problems with the pandemic. So come on, guys, you know. A little bit of sense, a little bit of tolerance, a little bit of patience would be an amazing thing, an amazing gift you could give to your retail and hospitality workers.
Yeah,
absolutely. Although, like, you can still buy stuff offline and get that really quick, like my Ghostbusters T-shirt to go and see the new Ghostbusters Afterlife with.
Oh, I saw that too.
Oh, absolutely fantastic, wasn't it?
Oh my God, I cried. I'm not gonna lie.
I don't
cried.
blame you. Absolutely.
I had tears.
I actually posted up on my social media page that at Dan Aykroyd, that was an absolutely amazing movie. This is the one we wanted and deserved.
I have to say though, I was thinking about this. Sorry, Richard, because poor
Well,
Richard.
yeah, because
No spoilers. There are no spoilers in this, and I do apologise, Richard. But if you want to go and see it, Rich, I will go with you because I'll see it again easily.
Oh, okay.
We could all go. We could all go
again. I would go. I would definitely go and see it again.
next.
I will
as I said,
say
next
this.
week I'm off, so yeah.
It had to have from the first one. A kind of there was no need for the second or third one. If they just left it, done the first one, left it for however many years it's been, 30 years?
Yeah.
And then done this one, brilliant.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. They didn't need the middle bits.
Yeah, I actually spoke to someone who said that they were educating their children before they went to see it with Ghostbusters 1 and 2. And I said to him, look, I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but if you don't rush about it, just show them the first one. Because the second and the other crappy one they done in 2016, that it's not relevant to the story.
No, it's first, fourth.
Yeah.
That's all you need. You don't need the other two in the middle. I really enjoyed the girly one. I'm not gonna lie. I did. I really enjoyed that one too. Paul hates it.
So you're gonna, aren't you?
Paul hates it. But Richard, I will go with you if you want to see it because I would happily see it again.
Oh, okay. I'll think about it. Yeah, I'll think about it.
I probably would cry again as well.
And I thought it was a good movie, especially like to dedicate to Harold Ramis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's an absolute fantastic tribute to him as well.
Yeah. Oh God, amazing. But I thought it was really, really good.
Stay for the end of credits scene.
Yes.
Because there is one.
Yeah. Brilliant. Brilliant movie. Go see it, guys. Absolutely brilliant. I can't waffle on about it enough, but I'm not going to because I don't want to put any spoilers out there for anybody, and I'm tempted to because we'll
talk about it off air, Kerry. It's fine.
Well, we can't because of Richard.
Well, I was just sort of, as you know, it doesn't bother me if I know the plot to films or anything. The only one I've gone to see, which you two have seen, is the new James Bond one.
Yes.
Which was run a little bit and hot and cold for me, but again, we'll leave that for our listeners to discern.
One other thing I want to just give a shout out to. There's a series on Amazon Prime called The Wheel of Time series. It was a series of books written by a guy called Robert Jordan, right, years ago. And his son took over it, or I think it was his son who took over because he died right before he finished. And so his son took over and finished the series. Well, they've just done a mini series, like an episodes of it. That is amazing.
Yeah,
if you're into your fantasy fiction, that series of books was brilliant in their own right. And I've got the whole series and I reread those on a regular basis. They're one of those books that I keep going back to. But and I thought, oh, how are they going? Because sometimes when they do a series of something, you think, oh no, they're gonna muck it up, right? They're not gonna translate it. And I'd seen the trailer and I thought, okay, looking okay. It is. Oh, it's great. It's really, really great. So go watch that, guys, as well.
Oh,
Amazon Prime. I'm really into that. That's sort of my binge watch behind the scenes at the moment. So, and while we're on TV and films, by the way, everybody.
Yeah.
Talking of which, while we're on this subject of shout outs, I'm in the middle of Darren Ritson's book. His new book.
Oh,
the one
you started it, yeah?
Yeah, I've started it. We're in the middle. I'm sort of halfway through of it. Brilliant. Again, I can't recommend that enough, guys. We had him on for a show to talk about it. Contagion, Poltergeist and Parallels.
Yeah.
Phenomenal or something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, Parallels and Contagion in the Poltergeist Phenomenon or something.
Something like that. Anyway, we've shared it to our Facebook wall on Paranormal Concept. And I will recommend that too, because that's really, really good book.
And in the book, we've also mentioned.
Yes, I haven't got to that bit yet.
Double page spread in the middle, yeah.
I think it is only a mention. I don't think it's like a full-blown chapter on
the whole chapter.
It'd
be quite a short chapter.
Yeah.
But that is, I do recommend that. I'm reading that one as we speak. So, or not as we speak, obviously, because like
I
when
was
we do the
about to
show,
say, no, you have to do the research. You can't read the book as well.
like, I'm just sitting here like feet up and reading the book while you two guys do the show. Yay!
Yeah.
Oh,
No.
No, I don't think
off
so.
we go. What are we talking about today, anyway?
Well, this is a subject that's close to your little heart, Richard, being as you're the one who did the research.
That's right, yes. Well, I thought we'd actually go back to the Victorian era because you know I like hanging around sort of that particular era, and I've got great fondness for it. And we will go back and look at spirit photography.
Mm.
So, what is it about spirit photography you
I
interested so
think
much?
these are some of the iconic pictures, sort of like, unlike today's photographs, these have got age to them. I mean, they're sort of like, it's back in the early ages of photography, and not a lot was known about it. And this sort of, and a lot of photographers at the time, I mean, sort of like took advantage of people's sort of ignorance and came up with sort of double exposures and things like that. But I just enjoy looking at these photographs.
Mm. I
Excellent.
think the photography thing is a very common thing, even in today's paranormal world, isn't it? You take a photograph of something, mostly it's pareidolia or, dust or spider
Hmm.
webs or something anomalous on a photograph, and people like to jump to the assumption straight away that it's the spirit that they're interacting with or that they're capturing on photograph. Well, nowadays we have digital, but back in today, what kind of cameras were around?
Well, they were the big sort of like in the early days. They're the ones that are like the big old box on legs, and you got the guy underneath the cloak, and you would have had to stay still for about something like 5 seconds whilst he exposed the negative, and yes, and and then that was it. And then he would have to go off and develop the plate and everything. But back in the early days, I mean, not many people would have had cameras, and photography would have been sort of only certain people would have done photography. And if you wanted photographs done, you would have had to have gone to a studio to actually have a setting.
Cool. And
Right.
before we start tackle your research,
Yeah.
the most important thing of any show, is there any words in it that Kerry can't pronounce?
I was looking through it. No, I've managed to keep it quite sort of this side of the Atlantic. There's a couple of American names, no, and I think she'll be all right.
Mm.
Okay.
I
So,
think one of the things I liked about this, we're staying on quite safe subjects for the next couple of weeks, is all I can say,
Yeah,
is that in part of it, you said that the photograph shows a specific moment in time, doesn't it, of what
yeah,
once was, because as soon as you take the photograph, it's in the past.
that's
yeah.
right.
It's not at this moment in time, it's in the past. So even if I took a photograph now, that's seconds ago and that's past, right?
That's past, yeah. So there's a sort of like a hint of a haunting there, isn't it? Like you're capturing past moments and stuff.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's sort of like the photography version of the stone tape theory.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And you can see why photographers sort of like went down this road. I mean, it was begging. It was there for the taking, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Now, we kind of know nowadays we're quite well teched up these days compared to, like what they would have been. When photography was first invented, it was a mystery. It was one of those mysteries. We've got a light box that could take a photograph of you, a likeness of you on this plate and give you a photograph. And, it was, people didn't understand the technology of it, like the double exposures or the combination printing where you can overlay negative onto negative and get another photograph on top. They didn't understand this. So nowadays we understand Photoshop. Whether or not we can do it remains to be seen. But we know the concepts of that. We know we can put images onto photographs. We know what we can do with photographs. We kind of know that the iPhone, if you take a photograph, can sometimes have like a blue blob or a green blob. in the photograph, which people have been saying is, hashtag ghost. Not, it's a thing of the camera. Orbs, we know the progression of orbs through photography because we've done the research, and people much better than us have done that kind of research. But back in the Victorian period, it wasn't that, was it? It was more of a mystery to them.
Yeah, as I touched upon earlier, sort of like photography in general to the general public was a mystery, and you would have trusted your photography you went to, but it was only a very small percentage of people, i.e. the photographers, would have known about this process.
Yeah, exactly. Now, you've got to remember the Victorian explosion of spiritualism that they had. So this was like an extension to that. So they're having the parlour games of table tipping and sitting around and doing Ouija boards and all that sort of thing. So when spirit photography came on the scene, obviously that was like you actually seeing an image of your loved one.
Yeah, I mean, it was sort of like the context. A little sneeze there. Sorry. Yeah, it was sort of the time was right. I mean, photography came along at the right time as well, sort of in the sort of like late 1940s, sort of around the time like the Fox sisters were actually sort of becoming quite well known for their apparent spirit rapping. So the two did marry rather well.
Yeah, we covered the Fox sisters in a previous show, guys. So if you want to go and check out that show, we talked about Victorian spiritualism, and the Fox sisters story is all in that show, isn't it? We covered that quite extensively. But this idea of contacting your beloved from beyond the grave was just such a thing. And Pete, like you say, people were ripe for the picking. So now, this was towards the end of the 18th century, coming into the early 19th century. And we didn't just see photography going on. We also saw artists being inspired by, what's the word? The dead?
The dead, yes. Yeah.
Now, we found an example of this. British artist and medium Georgiana Houghton produced watercolours that she dubbed her spirit drawings. Now, when we looked into Georgiana, she's interesting character in her own right, and not much of her work remains. There's only about 45 of her watercolors that she produced remain, and one of those was from her daughter. She said she was contacting her daughter, who was an artist in real life, and died, obviously. Was her name Zizzy or something? Zilla.
Yeah.
That's right. Her daughter Zilla was coming through and helping her produce these spirit drawings, and they're beautiful, aren't they? They're absolutely stunning.
They are, yeah, and I've sort of seen some sort of other spirit drawings, sort of like from quite modern times. I mean, me and Paul have been down the Antique Research Centre, and Neil's got some drawings there, which he's had a psychic artist come in and draw, and that and they are fascinating to look at, and you sort of think, are they in contact? But I think drawing, I put more credence in that than perhaps sort of straightforward mediumship. I don't know why. It's sort of, it's more sort of, it sort of takes more. It's more sort of an artistic flow, and I think, could it be?
I think it's because it's more visual, and when you're describing someone, it can be taken as an interpretation. Where if you've got a visual of someone that it's easier to believe it, I think.
Yeah.
I think what's more fascinating is like, right, for example, if I was to sit down and try and do a drawing now, I'm not an artist. It wouldn't be very good. My life drawings are crap. They're more like what's his blinking name? The abstract guy, Picasso, is it?
Oh no, you're talking what, Matchstick Men and Dogs?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
more like Lowry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, if I sat down and went into that meditative state and channeled a drawing and produced an absolutely phenomenal piece of work that was a lot more relevant than Lowry's kind of work, not taking anything away from Lowry for the artistic people out there, but the difference in drawing style makes it more relevant as a contact with spirit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I mean you could like with the visuals, definitely. But as I said, when you've got a medium sitting there going, right, okay, I've got a lady with white hair, it's straight. I mean, that's still quite vague, But if you see the drawing with the length of the how straight it is and stuff like that, you can relate to it a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I can understand it.
Yeah,
it's not as open to interpretation like
as a
the
description.
Barnum statement. You know what I mean? I've got an old lady in white hair. She looks like a grandmother figure. Is your grandmother passed? Yes, great. Tick.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Oh, she's sending you all her love, and all those comments that the platform medium could. I'm not saying they all do. I'm just saying the Barnum statement. We've covered that as well. The spirit drawing takes it to another level because you've got to either, you're drawing the person. It's either that person
Yeah,
or
that's
not.
right. Yeah.
Right. Now, it kind of is
a more detail.
Yeah, and then it's a natural extension when photography comes along to hey, we can put it in photos, right?
But in photo form, yeah.
So when they started taking these photos and then you'd get another image in there that you hadn't taken, you sat for a photograph, no one's with you. And then when they show you the photograph, there's another image in there as well of your loved one that's passed. It's very believable.
Isn't that more of a progression from going back to when they believed that they were catching the spirit of someone in the photograph when they took pictures of dead people?
Oh, there's some places in Africa that still believe that.
Yeah, there's sort of we sort of think of that as a tribal thing, but I'm sure back in the early days of photography that must have been lingering in the backs of people's minds that they were capturing more than just the physical likeness.
I mean, because don't forget, in newspapers as well, you would have had that progression in the newspaper. So you would have had the drawings, like we saw in the Penny Dreadfuls, like we saw, they would do rough caricature type drawings alongside to give the narrative, the narrative. Yeah. And then when photography come along, they see their queen having photographs taken, like Queen Victoria.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So when you start seeing high profile people have it, you kind of want it too. And if their souls aren't being captured, then you're okay, Jack.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
and I've got something very vague in the back of my memory about when they before photography and they done the silhouettes on jewellery.
Oh, the cameos.
The cameos.
Yeah. I'm sure sometimes they did the silhouette, and they believed that held the spirit as well.
Yeah, quite possibly, yeah.
I don't recall reading about that, but that's not far-fetched, really, is it, a thought?
No, I'm sure it was on one of these antique programs that I like watching.
Didn't Nelson have... he had a lot of cameos, didn't he? Of his wife.
Yeah. I think he did, or Lady Hamilton, the other woman.
Yes.
Scandal.
They also believed that when you do, like, if you was murdered or something, the image that you saw last would be printed on your lens of your eye.
That's right.
And I think that's where that idea of taking a photograph of your dead loved one captures the spirit. So I think that was sort of like a precursor to that.
So when photography came onto the scene, we have then this crossover of quite a lot of different thought patterns going on about, or beliefs set in stone about the capturing of an image is capturing of the spirit type thing. It's sort of like a natural progression, I will say.
I think it's like a Victorian version of Ghostbusters.
Of course.
Okay.
They didn't need proton streams; they just used cameras.
Yeah.
And it captured the spirit.
Yeah.
The spirit kills me dough, man, whatever he's called.
Yeah.
And I think, unfortunately, grief does weird things to people. And I think that
Oh, there's this longing, isn't there? I mean, sort of
Yeah, you
like,
want to see them again. You know, the worst thing about death is, you know, you're never going to see their face or hear their voice, and you want to. That's natural, right? Particularly if you've really loved somebody, you want that. And there's, you know, you've got to also look at the high mortality rate in the Victorian period, particularly with children and stuff like that. So, you know, it would be wonderful, wouldn't it, to have a photograph taken and then your loved one is beside you and you're like, yes, it's a bittersweet moment, isn't it? Because yes, they're still there and you can see them again because they're in the photograph, right? But unfortunately, you can't touch them or hug them or talk to them. But it's another link that you've got with them and that they are still with you, even though they're not physically with you. So you can understand the human acceptance of spirit photography as being genuine, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, given technology at the moment, and the way it's going, we could quite easily end up with the old Harry Potter photographs. You know, like when they're in the papers and they move.
Oh yeah, that's starting to happen though, isn't it?
Yeah, I
That's
think, you
starting
know,
to
with the
happen.
technology that we've got at the moment with face recognition, and you
Mm.
can, like the animations, they use like the whole face recognition, and they pinpoint certain spots on the face, and they can make it move and manipulate. And I think if they joined that with photography, you've got your moving pictures.
Mm. Yeah, as I say, I've seen some of those happen.
Copyrighted Paul Rook.
There you
I
go.
think it's
Another
already out there,
copyright.
Paul. I think it's
Yeah,
already
I've
out
just
there, darling.
copyrighted it. It's my idea. Anyone nicks it, I want £1 million every one sold.
I think you're late on the old story there because I think I've seen photos do that. Wasn't there a
Not
guy?
like describes.
Okay, all right, I'm sure I've seen it.
Million with J.K. Rowling, because she really had the idea before me.
This is different, but spirit photography is different from the post-mortem photography that gets spoken about a lot, where the Victorians had a habit, shall we say, which I don't actually think was as widespread as people like to think. I think they think that everybody did this, but they didn't. I think it was only people that could afford to do this.
Yeah.
Where if they had a baby or a loved one pass, then they would actually have a photograph taken with the body, like with the baby or and they would use various props to make it look like they were still there. So sometimes they'd be propped up on a hook or seated in a chair, or obviously babes in arms were held in their arms and stuff like that. And that's post-mortem photography. So that's slightly different. That's very different from what we're talking about here.
Yeah, there's more about that later anyway, so.
Okie dokes. So, spirit photography. Where are we going with this? So,
Well, I've just shared my knowledge on it. So
I also think, I mean, around this time, we also had, you know, we've got a lot of new technologies around as well.
Yeah.
Communication kind of technologies. So things like the telegraph and the telephone and the typewriter were now available technologies, and they were being applied towards communication with the dead, weren't they?
Well, of course, yeah. I mean, sort of, was it who invented the telephone? Was it Graham Bell? And he was initially trying to look for a device to actually communicate with the deceased. You know, so you had a lot of other people sort of, and at the time, sort of trying this as well, and photography was also trying it. But photography, I feel, and come out on tops. Not that it was showing authentic phenomena, but you know, it was showing something that people could actually see. It was more palpable.
Definitely, but in the photographs that you do see, they don't appear full. They're not like a full-blown figure. They're not like the person sitting there in the chair. They have got like an ethereal quality. Now, they use the technique of semi-translucence, right, So they're depicting the spirits as animated, still with us. So that's how they're doing that.
Because usually they're sort of like behind the sitter, and sort of it looks like they should be part of the photograph, but they're not.
No, so it is that halfway house look that they're going for, and indicated in the photographs. So when you look at a spirit photograph, you can definitely tell the one that's supposed to be the spirit. It's like a head. It's not generally anything more than that, is it? So it is a technique called semi-translucence that they used to use. So it's called this process is semi-translucence, right? Which is what they did. So it gives them that halfway look. So it looked like it was a ghostly apparition in the photograph. And spirit photography is one of the first, but not the first photographs to depict this ghostly apparition. But they do mark the first instance where these were marketed and considered proof of evidence of life after life, right?
Well, yes, and you sort of like look at it, and it would have been they would have got the image which a lot of people would have expected a ghost to be, which is like a semi-translucent figure sort of drifting down the hallways and through the wall, and you can actually see that, can't you?
Yeah, with a sheet on his head.
Yeah, with a sheet over his head.
Chains rattling.
Yeah,
it wasn't like that, guys.
With the photographs as well, I should imagine it's just a case of, the drawings previous to photography coming in didn't really cut it.
Yeah, they wanted something more,
and
then drew it. That's like, yeah, right.
Now, some of it is pareidolia, which is, pareidolia we've talked about before. It's that human tendency to perceive patterns, objects, and faces in random objects, wildlife, that sort of thing. So sometimes, if they didn't have like a photograph of the deceased,
because that's the way
they would sort of put a face behind like a veil or something. So was it a male, was it a female, who am I channeling here, kind of thing, and put sort of like a likeness face behind like a veil, so it added another level. Now these images of faces behind veils are very iconic of some religious iconography we've seen. Think of the Veil of Veronica. Which apparently bears the likeness of Christ's face imprinted on it before his crucifixion and things like that. And even the Turin Shroud to a degree.
Yeah.
So when you then put that on a photograph, it becomes more believable because you've already got this precedent set from that, belief system that's already out there. So, and because you want it so badly, you kind of see what you want to see.
Yeah.
Which, to be honest with you, I think we all do a bit of that daily anyway. You see what you want to see, not what is there. Your mind is a nightmare of a trickster, isn't it, really?
Well, yeah. And people that sort of, I should imagine back then you would have sought out a spirit photographer, not just any photographer. I'm sure they would market themselves as specialising in spirit photography, and they would have had, perhaps were more sort of better techniques, and they would have been more educated in the techniques of overexposure and stuff like that than your average photographer. You just went for a sitting.
Yeah, so you would go to an actual commissioned spirit photographer for this. Now, even if that photographer was exposed as a fake and a fraud, people still believed that their particular photograph was the real thing, was the real deal, was authentic. You know what I mean? But then we see
that these days, though.
Yes, we do.
You get it today. It's the same, Oh, yes, such and such, like the famous mediums we have today, and they've all been called out at some point in their careers. But you get the believers and you get the detractors, don't you?
You do. But we, like Paul said, you still get it today. So like you see somebody with a photograph and they'll go, oh, we captured this apparition. And you'll go, yeah, but we can explain that by this method or that technique or that flaw in the actual camera itself. And oh no, my photograph's the authentic one. So that still is a human trait that we have today. So it's one of those things, isn't it? They're intensely personal. I think that's the problem with photographs, is they're so intensely personal. Even with like orb photography, we've seen this happen with orb photography. You can explain it, and even share the research from ASAP that's been done on orbs, and they will still say, no, but only 99% of orbs are dust or moisture or insects. That my one's the real one.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Do you know what I mean?
Photographs still hold that very sort of personal, personal to the individual.
So. And this wasn't just back to the Victorian period. This still happened, or even back as far as 1962. There was a lady who commissioned a photograph of her late husband. She shared the photograph with the photographer. This is who I want coming through. So, she got the photograph with him come through on her photograph. Funny that, right?
Yeah, job done.
She quoted, "It is recognised by all that have seen it, who knew him when upon earth, as a perfect likeness, and I am myself satisfied that his spirit was present, although invisible to mortals." She gave the photographer all the details he needed, and still maintained.
I bet he never had it so good. Yeah.
I know, but even maintained that spirit was captured.
Yeah.
Yeah. Strange that.
But that's the strength of people's belief, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the problem, isn't it? That's the strength of it. Now, we know that a lot of the spirit photographers are fake. They're produced through double exposure or combination printing. So it's possible to produce photographs where they appear at full capacity alongside the bereaved, as well as just like a translucent kind of affair. Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand people who believe this, but then what do I know, really? I'm not that way inclined that I need that verification.
Yeah, but then okay, you don't understand people that believe in that, but then you've got your own belief systems, and there are some things that you believe in that even I think, do you know what, that just sounds a bit
batty.
Well, hey, you know.
Yeah, no, that's very true. That is incredibly true.
It's not necessarily my belief, but I know with obviously your beliefs and that, I do ask a lot of questions because it's just trying to grasp that concept as much as it annoys you.
No, I have no problem trying to explain it, because with explanation becomes deeper understanding for yourself as well. So I have no problem with trying to explain that, my belief systems. But when I've got something like physical proof in regards to like photography, it's a process, right?
Yeah.
It's a proven process. And if you know that you've supplied the photographer with all the necessary things he needs, like a photograph of the deceased one, then even my belief system, even though I've got some batty ones, are that's pushing it a bit, because it's like,
but then if
you showed me a UFO and it was metal and rivets, and yes, I'd believe it, right? It's right in front of me. I can touch it, I can feel it, I can see it, I can sense, everything about it is there. It's bricks and mortar. It's right in front of me.
Yeah, but there's a isn't there like a statue or monument or something in Rendlesham Forest of a UFO? You go there, you see it. So basically, what you're saying is you now believe in aliens because you see that.
No, because I know that's a statue. I know that's fake.
But I know that's fake. That UFO, and that's done.
Yeah.
So yeah, I see your point, Paul. Rendlesham Forest, but I know that's fake. I know that's a fake.
Yeah, I know, but it's just like basically because you see it, you believe it. So because you've seen the UFO, that's it.
Well, what can I can't take grief away from people, and it makes you think and feel and do stupid things, doesn't it?
Yeah. Definitely.
Okay. So let's have a look at William H. Mumler.
Yeah, is it Mumler? It's a funny old surname he's got there. That's probably the most difficult. That's probably the most difficult one. Oh, have you? It must have been. by a blog I wrote about him once many years ago now, it seems.
Yeah, it was quite a while ago, wasn't it? That one. Now, he was an American spirit photographer who worked in New York and Boston, and his first spirit photograph was actually a self-portrait, which he developed to show his deceased cousin. So if it happens with me, how can I fake that? I'm the photographer, and it's in my photograph of me. How could I possibly fake that? And he then left his job as a jeweler and decided to work full-time as a photographer, taking advantage of everybody that wanted this fantastic spirit photography. Obviously, at the time, you had got a lot of people with losses to do with the American Civil War.
Well, it was during the American Civil War, so the time was just right. I mean, and we've seen this countless times sort of during war, particularly the First World War as well, where there's sort of like been a rise in spiritualism when the nation's going through a hard time and there is a lot of death around, you know, and people are going to be concerned about their relatives in the hereafter.
Yeah, correct. Now, one of his most famous works was the photograph of Mary Todd Lincoln with the ghost of her husband, who was Abraham Lincoln, right? So that was one of his famous photographs that you might have seen out and about there. And the other photograph was of Master Herod, who was a medium with 3 spirit guides. And he took a photograph of him, and obviously it's 3 spirit guides, right? Now, he was accused of fraud, and he was taken to court for fraud. And even, get this one, P.T. Barnum testified against him. Yeah, our mate Barnum, he testified against him. And again, if you want to know more about Barnum, then you have to go back and listen to the show we did on that one, which is called P.T. Barnum, because that is a fascinating show in its own right. That is a character and a half. He was not found guilty, but his career was over. So all the money he made didn't do him much good because he actually died in poverty. Now, we know that they are fakes, yet they're still widely circulated. And even now, if you type in spirit photography, he does come up.
He'll be the first person to come up, and in the gallery, it would be all his images anyway. So it's definitely worth going to have a look at some of them.
Yeah, because they're they're actually quite good, really.
Well, some of them are, yeah. The iconic photographs you remember when you're a little boy, sort of going through your books on the paranormal, and he would usually crop up.
Definitely. Now, obviously, these are marketed now as objects of belief and curiosities to do with that time period, and they really do sort of demonstrate a good understanding of what people were looking at. But you have to look at, how many times have we said this? You have to look at these things with the eyes of those that were looking at them at the time, not now modern eyes, because it's we go, oh yeah, so fake now, but back then it was so new to them that it really wouldn't, right?
Yeah, you had nothing to compare it with. Apart from other spirit photographs, obviously.
Yeah. Now, he was actually married, Mumla was actually married also to a famous healing medium who actually conducted her business beside her husband. So, oh my God, oh yes, I can sense your husband here. He wants his photograph taken with you. Quick, get the photograph. It's only going to cost you another $60 kind of moment. Right. I feel that was going on. So the taking advantage of people in grief, that's something very unpalatable. Of taking advantage of somebody whilst they're in grief, because I don't know about you, but whenever those periods of time where you've lost somebody hit you, you're not really thinking straight. You just need somebody to be honest and transparent and show you the way forward without ripping you off. It's a really wrong time to be ripping somebody off, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so you just have to. But who else do you trust? I mean, you go to these people, and if they're offering this service, you can see why people trust it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, during the testimony that P.T. Barnum brought to the table, he actually had hired a guy called Abraham Bogardus to the table to actually recreate a picture that showed Barnum with the ghost of Abraham Lincoln as well, to show how easily these photographs were created.
Yeah.
But there
Yeah,
were those that
okay.
testified in support of Mumla, including Moses A. Dow, who was a journalist who Mumla had actually photographed. He was acquitted, as I say, he was acquitted with fraud, but his career was ruined.
Yeah. The damage had already been done, I suppose. The detractors would have, jumped on that straight away.
Yeah, yeah, most definitely. Now, he went on to become a photograph publisher, discovering a photographic printing process from woodcuts that's known, what was known then as the Mumla process. But that didn't make him any money, basically.
Right.
Okay. So let's have a look at Master Herod. He was a young medium from Bridgewater in Massachusetts. He was photographed by Mumla in about 1872. That photograph developed apparently showed Herod in a trance surrounded by his spirits. We talked about his spirit guides.
Oh, yeah. He's
Europe, Africa, and America, they were called. Funny that.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And the
That's the
photograph.
place where they conceived.
Yeah, maybe. They were authentic, like ethnically.
yeah.
Maybe ethnically they looked like that, and he didn't get their names. They weren't that good spirit guides. I didn't give them the names, but he gave them countries. Who knows, right? Now, this photograph was actually advertised for sale in the Religious Philosophical Journal on August the 24th, 1872. Do we know how much that went for?
No,
35p.
I don't think. No.
We'll
No,
go
I
with
don't
80
know
because that's a nice round number, isn't it?
that. Okay, so we'll do that. Oh dear. And other photographs by Mumla included pictures showing various spirits, with the sitters.
yeah.
Right, so Moses A. Dow, the editor of the Waverley magazine, had a photograph that showed his spirit of his assistants Mabel Warren and Fanny Conant. A well-known medium from Boston was actually photographed, or apparently photographed, with her brother Chaz.
Oh, good old Chaz. He turned up, did he?
Oh.
Chaz did. Now, William Hope. Let's have a look at William Hope, shall we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, before we do that, should we take a break?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, I think.
Should we take a quick break
Yeah.
on this one? Okay, so we'll join us right back after this.
Hello, Harry Price here. If there's nothing me and my friends enjoy more here on the other side, it is to sit back and relax and listen to the Paranormal Concept Show, right here on the PA UK radio network. Broadcasting a plethora of interesting and informative content for all your paranormal needs. Find them across social media to keep up to date with forthcoming shows and all their other adventures. Hello, is there anybody there?
And welcome back to the Paranormal Concept Show, exclusive to the Paranormal UK radio network. Oh my goodness, boys. I do apologise for tonight. It's been a bit hit and miss this end, is all I'm going to say. So the boys are doing really well keeping up with me.
Where are we?
Where are we?
What show is it?
We're at William Hope, okay?
Oh, okay.
He was the pioneer of this so-called spirit photography. He was actually based in Crewe in England, and is actually was should I say, because he died in 1933. He was a well-known member of the spiritualist group, the Crewe Circle. He started life as a carpenter, right, as you do, and he quickly became prominent in paranormal circles, even after claiming to be able to capture the images of spirit on camera, right?
Right, okay.
First image he captured was in 1905, and then in the Crewe Spiritual Circle group, he actually, found himself in there with the leader.
Oh, right. So
he was up there. He was up there.
So he certainly got his. Yeah, that certainly didn't do him too bad then.
No, not really. In 1916, he managed, or I say managed, he duped William Crooks with a fake spirit photograph of his wife.
Oh.
All right. Oliver Lodge did say there are obvious signs of double exposure, and that the photograph itself, the lady, the wife in the photograph, actually looked like a photograph of her in a wedding anniversary photograph.
Oh, okay. So yeah.
So he was like, I know that photo. I know that. That was from your wedding anniversary photo, weren't it? Right? However, Crookes was a convinced spiritualist and claimed it was genuine evidence. So he wasn't going to believe what was right in front of his eyes. So no matter whether Lodge said, that's your wedding anniversary photograph, isn't it? Crookes was like, no, this is evidence, folks. Right? But doubts were also raised about his spirit photography in 1908. Now, he was first exposed properly in 1920 by Edward Bush, who caught him out by using a trap. He used the fake name Wood, sent a letter to Hope with a photograph of a living person, and said that the person in the photograph was actually his deceased son.
Right, okay, yeah.
He then attended a sitting with Hope, and of course, Hope produced a spirit photograph with this photograph in it, and with words on it as well. It didn't just have the photo, like the image. He actually had the words "Dear Friend Wood."
Right.
And this reminds me of Most Haunted, quite frankly. The cyclical researcher Watley Carrington wrote regarding the exposure, any reasonable person will say that Mr. Bush had actually proved his case. I think you're right there. And in 1921, Mr. DeVaga, a friend of the magician Harry Houdini, attended a sitting with him. Now, Houdini did this, right? Because he's quite a well-known character, Houdini.
Yeah.
So if he rocked up to a spiritualist meeting or a spiritualist group, of course, everyone's on their guard. This is the guy that's out to prove everybody is fake, right?
Yeah, Houdini, well, he was well known for it, wasn't he? Sort of like it was his own personal crusade, wasn't it?
So he'd have confidants, shall we say, who he would send out to do his dirty work, as it were. And he sent Mr. DeVaga. Mr. DeVaga attended a sitting with Hope, and he found the dark conditions in the room suspicious and suspected that Hope had switched a plate.
Oh, right, yeah.
That old one, eh?
Oh, that old chestnut.
That old chestnut. But didn't prove anything from that point. Now, in 1922, the Society for Psychical Research, the SPR, and paranormal investigator Mr. Harry Price, alongside James Seymour, Eric Dingwall, and William Marriott, demonstrated that Hope was fraudulent during tests at the British College of Psychic Science. And Harry Price wrote that William Hope has been found guilty of deliberately substituting his own plates for those of a sitter. It implies that the medium brings to the sitting a duplicate slide and faked plates for fraudulent purposes.
Yeah. Doesn't sound too good for him, does it?
Not particularly. Now, Price had actually secretly marked Hope's photographic plates, provided him with a packet of additional plates that had been covertly etched with the brand image of the Imperial Dry Plate Company Limited, in the knowledge that the logo itself would be transferred to any images created by them.
Right.
So Hope, unaware that they'd been tampered with, attempted to produce spirit photographs, right?
Yeah.
He did produce several images. None of his materials contained the Imperial Dry Plate Company Limited logo or the marks that Price had put on Hope's original equipment, showing that he had exchanged prepared materials containing fake spirit images for the provided materials.
Right, I see how he done it. Clever.
Now, Price later republished the Society's experiment in a pamphlet of his own called Cold Light on Spiritualistic Phenomenon, an experiment with the Crew Circle. So he was well and truly exposed. Quite honestly, I will say, this particular situation, you can kind of relatively easily prove fake, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, I think as they showed there, I mean, they didn't really have to do a lot, did they?
Not really.
The guy switching plates, obviously, as they sort of thought he was.
Because, like I say, this is like bricks and mortar kind of stuff. You can do stuff with bricks and mortar kind of stuff, can't you? Or in this case, camera and equipment and plates. So you've got something you can tangibly mark or seal or whatever to prove the fake side of things, right? So unfortunately, this actually caused a bit of an issue because Arthur Conan Doyle actually led a mass resignation of 84 members of the SPR as they believed the society was actually opposed to spiritualism. They weren't, they were opposed to fake.
Yeah, so also Doyle got involved in all this then.
Yeah.
Not surprising.
Now, Arthur Conan Doyle, again, we've done a show on Arthur Conan Doyle. Bless him. For somebody who was so, we said this on the show we did about the Cottingley Fairies, for somebody who was so, what's a jig?
Well, so sort of keyed up and clued, because he wrote the Sherlock Holmes novels and, to do all them plots and things and stuff like that. He was a very educated man.
Yeah, to then believe something that is tangibly proven is quite frankly a bit of a weird one. But Doyle threatened to have Price evicted from his laboratory and claimed if he persisted to write sewage about spiritualists, he would meet the same fate as Harry Houdini. There's a threat.
Now, there is a threat, yeah.
I wonder if he said, "Get out of my lab."
Get out of my lab. Yeah. Now, Doyle and other spiritualists continued to attack Price, and for many years, they tried to get Price to take his pamphlet out of circulation. And Price actually wrote, Arthur Conan Doyle and his friends abused me for years for exposing hope. So we have a faction split within the SPR now, don't we?
Yeah. As you said, obviously Conan Doyle took it rather personally and sort of said that the SPR was against all psychical research. Yeah, he threw his toys out the pram, really.
Totally. Right. Even though I have to say on this one, I mean, I'm quite, cynical about Harry Price at times myself, but on this particular occasion, he's in the right.
Yeah.
However, despite Price's findings, Hope still retained a good following amongst spiritualists. Doyle refused to accept any evidence that Hope was a fraud and even invoked a conspiracy that Price and other researchers had framed Hope.
Yeah.
Massimo Polidoro had written The Case of William Hope and His Crew Circle deserves to be remembered today because it shows that it is practically impossible and futile to try to convince someone who wants to believe, even in the face of quite convincing contrary evidence. Yeah. And that is a statement that holds true even today.
Yeah, of course it does.
And that's why so many arguments go off on the socials.
Yeah, tell us about it.
Unfortunately, because if you want to believe, nothing anybody can say is going to change your mind. Now, Hope's exposures were discussed in detail by James Black in an article for the Scientific American in 1922, and he concluded, which I think we all have concluded by now, that Hope was a common cheat who obtains money under false pretenses. Now, Fred Barlow pops up. He's a former friend and supporter of Hope's work and also the secretary of the Society for the Study of Supernormal Pictures. And along with Major W. Rampling Rose, now there's a name for you.
Rampling Rose, yeah, you gotta like that.
Love it. Gave a joint lecture to the Society for Psychical Research to present findings gleaned from an extensive series of tests on the methods Hope used to produce his spirit photographs. They concluded that the spirits that appeared in Hope's photos were produced fraudulently.
Right.
So in 1933, Hope was discredited when the pair presented their case in depth against him in the proceedings of the Society of Psychical Research. So you had all these years of wrangling between Hope and Conan Doyle, and it was only until 1933 that they finally went, yeah, he's a fake.
Yeah, it just shows, doesn't it?
They found he was using one of those phone apps.
If only they were around at the time. Now, the psychical researcher Eric Dingwall also noted another exposure. Now, this involved James Hewitt Mackenzie, who had discovered fraud but failed to make it public. Now, Paul Tabori said, In 1933, the widow of the proprietor of the British College for Psychic Research admitted in an article that after the sitting, her husband went through Hope's luggage and found in a suitcase a flash lamp with a bulb attached, some cut-out photographic heads and some hair. These basic facts were suppressed in 1922. William Hope wasn't laid low conclusively until 1944, when Fred Barlow and W. Rampling Rose proved finally that during the extensive series of experiments they had conducted with Hope, all the spirit extras that had been obtained could have been fraudulently produced. Which I actually think, unfortunately for this one, right, Harry Price had already done this.
He'd already done all the legwork. I mean, they suspected from the start, more or less, didn't they? But it just takes time, I suppose, to get it out there.
But Harry Price kind of.
I suppose it's just like they're just building a case, aren't they? So again, someone always does the legwork, and then people just build on the top. And it's the same with even paranormal investigations. At this moment in time, we're building the ground level basically. But as more and more people join, and there'd be more and more levels. So in the future, eventually we get to the top and we'll know everything.
Hopefully a lot more than we know now.
Well, exactly.
And we know a bit.
Yeah,
but it does. But it is. I do think poor old Harry Price was a bit like, he'd already done it. He'd already done the proof. It took other people to sort of like come out and say it, and I think that's a bit sad, really.
Yeah.
Now, Hope would carry out prayers, religious hymns, all sorts of weird and wonderful things, and the Focal Encyclopedia of Photography actually described him as undoubtedly a schizophrenic. On one side of his character, he was alert, witty, patently honest North countryman, whilst on the other hand, he was a bogus medium who used prayers and psalm singing as a cloak for his fraudulent operations.
Right.
So I think the old Victorian seance spirit photography that went on, I think we can safely say was easily done.
Yeah.
Easily fraud.
It was sort of more or less known from the outset. Well, the people in the know, but but the general public were sort of
duped.
And plus, like today, and as you said, you get mediums that they have their detractors and they have their following. So the same would have gone on back then.
Yeah, exactly. It's a sad case, isn't it? Really. Now let's talk post-mortem photography. We mentioned that at the beginning of the show. Let's have a little bit more of a look at it. Now, nowadays, we have videos at our fingertips. We have photographs at our fingertips. We have done now for quite a long time. I think I remember as a child, I had one of those Polaroid cameras where I could take, you'd pull the thing out, wave it around, and it would develop before your very eyes.
Yes, that's right. I had one of those as well.
Yeah, I think that was like my first experience of photography. Well, now we've got phones, we can video, we can take photographs. It's accessible, but back then in the 1800s, it wasn't. You didn't have that. You didn't have family photographs en masse like we do today. So photography was a special thing, and it was expensive. So their view of death also wasn't as creepy as it would be today, right?
No, sort of. I mean, the Victorians, they lived alongside death quite as a matter of fact. Well, it was. I mean, times were harder back then, weren't they? And there would have been, especially amongst infants. I mean, death was quite common, really.
Exactly. So the mortality rate, particularly for children, was very high. And what do? You've got a child that's died and you've got no way of remembering them, apart from maybe, a cap that they wore, a shawl that they wore. You want a representation, and photography gave you that. It gave them comfort in a way that we take for granted nowadays. So when we look back at this time where they took post-mortem photographs of these, the dead and the deceased, we kind of go, oh my God, that's awful.
That's really creepy.
Exactly. But it's not, is it? Not when you've got nothing else and you can
No.
get a photograph of them in death, and you maybe can only afford it at that point. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they were taken in love, basically.
Yeah.
Now, this kind of photography, it began quite quickly after photography's introduction in 1839. Now, the other side of this is the process of when a body passes, it goes through certain expulsions.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, it goes through its sort of expiry process, doesn't it?
It does. So back in those days, they didn't have those procedures that we have today, right?
Mhm.
So nobody really posed the bodies or particularly cleans them up. They kind of, oh, let's just do it, right? So a poorer family wouldn't be able to afford the niceties of washing the body, putting a nice dress on them, posing them in a nice way.
Mhm.
So you get photographs where they might have a nice dress laid over the body.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something like that over their shabbier clothes
Yeah,
rather
that's
than
right.
actually dressing them. They didn't undress them, clean them up, then put a nice dress on them. It was just like, oh, just lay it over, it'll be fine kind of scenario. There was very little beautifying of the corpse. And also, don't forget, you've also got the fact that this is very early photography.
Yeah, I mean, the images out there are quite sort of stark to look at. It is predominantly children used, and again, if somebody wants to go and have a look at it, just tap in post-mortem photography,
Yeah.
and it will all come up.
And the early photographs of this are very brash and
Yeah.
quite horrible, some of them. I mean, we saw one where there was blood. You could see the blood that was coming out of the deceased person's mouth.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to go and have a look at some of these, you want to have a look at the Burns archive because a lot of the photographs are there.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people died in their homes as well rather than hospitals, so photographers would actually go to the house to take the pictures. Now, Americans kept the photographs in hard cases, so they would display them on the mantle or keep it in private. In Europe, it was more fashionable or common to frame these photos and hang them on the wall. And Europeans also liked pictures of dead celebrities and sold them as cards, like Victor Hugo.
Okay.
Right?
Oh, right, yeah.
This is in the very early days. Now, towards the turn of the century, parents and photographers actually began to do a bit more, like freshen it up a little bit more. So they would fix their hair, dress them up, even open their eyes.
Yeah.
And then they would also place certain objects to symbolize, the life, death, and constant march of time and all those sort of things. A drum was very common in these photographs
Yeah.
because the beating of the drum of death at the end of life. Yeah. And you would get other
Yeah.
symbols like hourglasses and flowers and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Now, as we head into the 20th century, basically, it started to come out of the home and into medical facilities. Okay. Photography became cheaper and more accessible, and therefore, because we've already got photographs of them, we don't want the post-mortem photo now because we've got ones of them whilst they were alive, which are much better. And also into hospitals or facilities, it's less of a need, right? It's not in their home. You wouldn't want a photograph of them in the hospital. You'd want them at the home, but that was taken out of the home. So, it becomes more out of fashion to do it.
Yeah, I can see that, but we still have a sort of, it's possibly a hangover from this period. It's still quite fashionable to actually have the feet, isn't it, and hands cast in plaster of Paris or something
Yeah, you can do.
of newborns.
Yeah.
And I've heard
And now
parents actually doing that with their stillborns as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that, to be fair, that's a thing that's like, whether they're alive or past, you know, that is a thing we can do now. But I mean, I think at the end of the day, going back in time, they used to do death masks in wax, didn't they?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
death masks is a common sort of thing. Yeah.
So again, this representation in a photograph is not that big a step from a death mask. It's just a photograph. Cheaper, probably, than actually having a death mask done.
Yeah.
More accessible
Do you
to
know
the.
what? Do
Pardon?
you know what the world's famous death mask is?
No.
It wouldn't be willing. Is it the Conqueror?
No. It's actually the face of the Rhesus dolls they use in first aid training.
Oh, she was an Anne
And they're-
Doe, wasn't she? A Jane Doe, sorry.
Yeah, Jane Doe. She was a woman that was found drowned in, wasn't it the River Seine? And obviously they didn't know who she was, but apparently she looked really gorgeous. And they took a mask of her face, and that's now the mask they use for the Rhesus dolls.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And they never solved that. They never found out who she was.
No, not as far as I'm aware, no.
Oh, wow. Oh, bless her.
Yeah. But since then, she's saved so many thousands and millions of lives.
Yeah, she
And no
has.
one knows who she is.
No, they don't. Oh my God, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Jane
History
Doe.
for you.
She's Annie the doll. Oh, bless her. I wonder if she knows that. Maybe we should get Barry Strummond to ask her.
Yeah, we could do.
Yeah.
We?
But then he'd need to know who she was, I suppose.
Yeah, true.
Yeah,
Interesting one. Yeah, interesting. But you can understand now why post-mortem photography, even, I can't speak. God, it doesn't need words for me to not pronounce. I get to the point where I can't speak anyway. Is also known as memorial portraiture or the morning portrait. And various cultures have used this practice, but it was generally Europe and America.
Yeah.
But now I do see this on the socials quite a lot. Somebody will share a photograph, say alive or dead. Some of them are obvious because you can see like where they've been propped up or sat up or whatever. But others are not quite so concrete.
Oh right, yeah. Sort of like I've seen the Victorian ones, and you can usually pick out the deceased amongst them, you know. But interesting.
Now today we still do post-mortem photography, but this is in the context of police and pathology and forensic work.
Yeah, well, they have to, don't they?
Yes, definitely.
Crime scene photography. Yeah.
The invention of the so you did find a word I can't say. Daguerreotype.
Well done, Richard.
Yeah.
Oh right, yeah.
In 1839, made portraiture much more commonplace because she was unable to afford the commission of a painted portrait. So, you know, that's why people went to photography rather than a portrait.
Yeah.
So artists,
Cheaper,
bless them, were like, oh no, I can't paint this dead person. I know how I'm being outdone by the photographers. And it's quicker. Not being funny, a photograph is a lot quicker than somebody painting a portrait, right?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
And portrait painting was generally restricted to the upper classes because, you know, posher, right? And they did tend to commemorate their dead with the new, you know, the new method.
Well, no, did you see the size of some of the portraits that are hanging like Buckingham Palace and things? You know, you won't get a photograph that big.
No.
So
Well, you would if you blew it up, but then you get pixelization and it becomes less clear, doesn't it? That's more of a modern thing that you can blow things up with the same quality.
But then if you've got loads of money, you might as well just have a massive big portrait done and you know, have it done like that. But yeah, if you're poor, just stick with the 4x10 photograph things.
Definitely.
I think the probably the first ever post-mortem portrait must have been the Duke of Monmouth in the late 16th century, who was executed for rebellion. And after they cut his head off, they realised they didn't have a portrait of him, so they sewed his head back on.
That's right.
Yes,
Yeah.
they did.
They had to do a portrait.
Oh,
must
quick!
Really well, apparently, as
Oh,
well.
quick! Let's stick his head back on.
Because the artist paint his eyes open and didn't do the stitches on the neck, so no one
you know,
knew.
he had I don't know, he had a ruff on or something or whatever he had.
Yeah.
Yeah. Must look
To be honest, though, even artistic license was used, because if you was doing like a king or a queen, this is to do with painting portraits. You don't want to upset the king or queen. I mean, think of when the guy went to was it Anne of Cleves? He had to go and paint.
Oh yeah.
To bring back to King Henry VIII, and he said that does not look like her painting. Catfished big time, right?
Oh yes, I remember. Yeah, it was like he painted someone really nice looking, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And then when she walked through the door, he's like,
yeah.
He was like, well, where is she? Yeah, where is she? That's not who I saw a photograph of. I've agreed to marry that.
It's like one of those really bad days, isn't it? When you fix someone up
Holbein.
online.
I bet he swore about Holbein, because it was Holbein he sent over, and Henry called her the Flanders mare.
That's right. So Holbein, was he like executed for that?
No, I don't think so. But
I bet he went in hiding. So that's portrait painting. So you still have to be very. The thing with photographs, though, is you can hide certain amounts in this new type of photography that was around the late in the 1800s. So you can hide so much by like laying a dress on to hide the shabby clothes, opening their eyes, like propping them up into a pose, that kind of thing. There is only so much you can do, though.
Yeah.
Because there is only so much you can do. Now, it takes time. Although it's quicker than a portrait, it's quite a long exposure time on a plate. On plate photography. So there are various things that that we don't see now, we don't have now, because it's like click done, quick selfie, click done, you know what I mean? Whereas back then it was like you would have to sit for quite a while. I don't know how long.
Well, sort of like 10, 15 seconds, I think. Yeah.
Because it's easier to photograph a dead person, quite frankly. Then it would be
nice crisp lines around the outside, because they haven't moved.
Exactly. Whereas like alive children, God, I've done this with my two boys when they were younger. To get them to sit still for 2 minutes was a trial, right? Yeah. Let alone however long the exposure took. Which I think, if I remember rightly, was a good few minutes. I think it was about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That's ringing a bell in my brain.
Yeah, sort of with children. Yeah, you think it's still a nightmare now taking a young child to be properly photographed.
Mm-hmm. So what they would do in that circumstance with a live living child, they would actually have a mother that was hidden in frame. So she'll be behind a curtain or something and calming the child down. Do you know what I mean? Behind a curtain or something, she'll be hidden. So she's in frame, but she's kind of hidden. But she's like the one sort of holding the child down to keep the photograph done, right? Now, according to Mary Warner Marion, post-mortem photography flourished in the photography's early stages, who preferred to capture an image of the deceased loved one rather than have no photograph at all. And it was actually a staple for the photographic business back in the 19th century.
Yeah.
Now, there was a journal article written called Camera Fiends, Early Photography, Death and the Supernatural. So go check out that article, guys, because it really does show the explosion of this particularly during times of cholera or tuberculosis, where we had a huge death rate problem going on. And it was new, it was exciting, it was reasonable, it was cheap relatively against portrait artists, and their namesakes, like their keepsakes, aren't they?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see why people done it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then they invented the carte de visit, the carte de visit. Oh God! So you did find words in there, Richard.
Yeah, I found a couple. Yeah, French, but there you go.
La carte de visite. There we go. I can say it in a French accent. I can't say it in English. Now, this allowed multiple prints to be taken from one negative. So you do one negative, take lots of prints, and then you could send the image to all the relatives.
Hooray!
Woohoo!
Yeah.
Everybody has a photograph. But then, of course, we get into the 20th century and everybody starts getting cameras for themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, there is such a thing as post-mortem photography, and in 1970s was taken up by artists, continues today, right?
Does it really?
It certainly does. So you've got artists such as Jeffrey Silverthorne, Hans Danisser, Hannah Wilkes, Nick Waplington, and Sue Fox. All sorts of things. There's a famous series called the Morgue series that was called by Nan Golden and Andre Serranos. And basically, it was just artists using their medium against
So
the
they're using it as
medicalisation of death.
Yeah. So I suppose, yeah.
Yeah. It generally
I
was
don't
quite a
suppose
private
they have
affair.
much problem with their sitters, do they?
No, I have to say nowadays, right, and I've seen this be quite a controversial topic out there. Modern day, this is coming right forward into modern day. There is, unfortunately, some children are not born alive; they're stillborn, and you have your photograph taken with them, with the child, and you put it out there perhaps, and you go, oh, you shouldn't have taken a photograph of a dead child. Well, I'm sorry, but that is important to me. That would be, I have not had that experience, but I know people that have, and that is the only reminder they've got of carrying a baby for 9 months and then unfortunately it passing at the last moments before birth or during birth. And that is an important process, I would say, in regards to helping the mother and father grieve that. So you see it today, it still causes controversy when it's made public. So it does tend to be a very private thing. But there is a charity called Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep that has public circulation of these children on the charity. And it is controversial, unfortunately, but I don't think it should be.
Is that a national, like just an English charity, or is it a worldwide one?
I don't know, actually. I didn't look into that too deeply.
Okay.
I just know that
thinking
there
if there's
is.
any American listeners that would be interested in donating or anything to them.
I don't know, but I do think it's important. A friend of ours, on the loss of her babies, set up a charity, and she did keepsake boxes where she would put all things that are really important as a keepsake box, as a reminder that you had that child. Whether it be a 3-month miscarriage or a 9-month stillborn, she really integral part of her grieving process, and other mums going through it who realized they weren't alone, that they had someone to talk to, that understood the process that they were going through and the trauma that was causing the family, and not an extended family. It's not just the mother and the father, it's extended family, siblings and grandparents and all that. Absolutely horrendous. It is important to recognize that and celebrate the fact that you still had that child. You still were pregnant with that child, and it's incredibly important part of the grieving process. So I don't blame them back in the day if that's the only reminder they had was a post-mortem photograph of their child or their mother or their father or whoever it was back then, because that's all they had back then. So I really don't have an issue with that. Now, J. Ruby's analysis of various styles of post-mortem photography, particularly regarding poses of the dead, actually argued that key poses reflected cultural attitudes towards it. So he said the dominance of the last sleep pose in the first 40 years of post-mortem portraiture, which is where the deceased's eyes are closed and like they lay in repose, was the Americans' desire to associate death with sleep.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I
suppose,
get that.
you know, you'd always want someone to die in their sleep.
Exactly.
It's a peaceful way to go.
Exactly. It's not a traumatic way to die if you just go to sleep like normal and you just don't wake up. You know, I think that's like you say, that's the kind of the death we all kind of want. It's a nice, peaceful.
I see. When it's my time and death comes for me, I'm going out kicking and screaming because that's how I come in.
I don't want an illness. I just would like
Oh
to
yeah, no, I wouldn't want anything like that.
go to sleep and it be a natural process rather than a traumatic process towards the end, I think. Now, another popular arrangement was the deceased presented seated in a chair or arranged to mimic life.
Yeah.
Because it serves as a reminder of their social presence, what they were like in real life, standing and sitting and talking and reading or painting or whatever pose you wanted to put them in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gives them their social presence. So you're remembering them not just as a person, but a bit of their character, what they liked as well.
Yeah, and like with the newborns, they used to give the mothers like hold it in like as they would if it was alive.
Yeah, exactly. Because it encourages you to see it through the eyes of the mother.
Yeah.
You know, the pain, and she's a mother. It also, it's representation of she still was a mother. Even though that child may not be around, that she was a mother. She had that child. How beautiful. I think that's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
They added things like rosy tints to the cheeks to make it look more alive. It's actually untrue that metal stands and other devices were used to pose the dead as though they were living. The use by photographers of a stand or an armrest, sometimes referred to as a Brady stand, aided living persons to remain still long enough for the camera's lengthy exposure time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is where the myth has actually risen from, because of these stands. Everyone sort of jumped to an assumption that it was for the post-mortem photography, whereas it actually wasn't. It was for the real people, alive people.
Okay.
Okay. So if you're looking at a metal hook in a photograph, it actually should be understood as proof that the person was actually a live person.
Yeah. That's a way of looking at it, I suppose.
Now, a later photographic example shows the subject in a coffin with the people around the coffin. Now, this was very popular in Europe, less common in the United States. And actually, it is still practiced.
Okay.
Haven't seen that in the UK anywhere, though, to be fair. So, interesting topic. And there are cultural nuances in with this. So, right, the United States, America.
Right.
It became an increasingly private practice mid to late 19th century, moved out of the trade journals and public discussion. It's now very private. And it tends to be with the coffin, with the deceased in the coffin, obviously, and then the mourners around it. That's where it is. There are examples of death photography in the 1960s, but they tend to be more rural, middle class families.
Right, yeah, Hungarian immigrants and it says here, yeah.
And you did find it amongst the African American citizens as well. in that one. Now, in Iceland, the popularity of professional post-mortem photography peaked in the early 1900s, died out in the 1940s, transferring mainly to amateur photography for personal use. When examining Iceland's culture surrounding death, it says that it's actually an important and significant companion, their attitude towards death. So it's important and significant. Now, the country's infant mortality was actually higher than that of other European countries. So death was a very public topic through Iceland's eyes. Do you know what I mean? It was something that should be discussed. It should be out there. We're all having to face it because there's a high mortality rate, blah, blah, blah. Do you know what I mean? So you can tell the post-mortem photography can be deduced from its earlier expressions in poetry of the above average death rates. So they see it as it's just a symphony of life. It's, it's more of a natural progression. It's not traumatic. It's just part of it.
Yeah, I think that also breeds like fear to a point where there's countries out there that don't like to talk about death. When it comes to the stage of life when they're, going to shuffle off the mortal coil, it scares them because they don't know anything about death. Where if where in, as you said, Iceland, they're more open to the subject, so the people can talk about it and have all their various theories flying about, and it makes it easier. I mean, in obviously the paranormal field, we're dealing with spirits and that we've said passed over, so we're dealing with death essentially, and I think having some understanding of it helps, because I'm not scared of death, just because I have my ideas about what's going to happen after death. And I'm scared the pants off of it Fielding and other paranormal TV programs.
I'm not scared of death itself. I'm scared of the process of death.
No, but there's nothing to be scared of.
There is if you're ill.
Yeah,
but then when you die, you get
released from that.
Get your health back, and you're not in pain. If you're in pain, obviously, you're not in pain or anything, and you're just free.
Yeah, but like I say, I'm not scared of death itself. I'm scared of how I get to that point of death. Okay. So that's actually a living experience I'm scared of, not the end bit.
Don't worry about it. You just go to sleep one day and that's it, done.
It is what it is, basically. You can't do anything about that. Now, in the 1940s, this is in Iceland, by the way, you rarely see photographs of the deceased, their casket or their gravestone. There's some documentation about funerals and wakes. You generally would have an obituary section and find details of information regarding individuals' deaths there. But in regards to the rest of it, it's very personal and private. So there's no record of community-based professional post-mortem photography in Nordic society. There's some amateur family kind of photographs that were taken, but that is the family taking photographs, not actually a industry, as it were.
Yeah.
So there was an industry, but now there isn't.
Right. Yeah.
And their understanding of the death process is very private, very personal, and accepted. Do you not think people are talking of death, right? Let's talk about death for a bit. What do you think the UK's attitude towards death is? Do you think we just ignore the fact? We're very good at ignoring things, aren't we, until they're in your face, and then it's a big shock and we're all traumatized about it.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of people out there that don't know anything about it, so they don't have an understanding. So they do just ignore it until it comes upon them. But the way the British people are, they're just they're still very stiff upper lip, and they'll tackle it head on.
Yeah.
When it comes to it, like we do with anything.
Yeah, I mean, culturally, yeah, we're sort of, we live at a time where, we don't see death, we don't acknowledge death around us because, just it just is. I mean, I'm sort of thinking about off the top of my head now. I don't sort of I'm 50 something or other, 56, and I I've I've never seen a dead body.
I haven't.
Oh, I have.
Yeah, well, you work in that sort of field, but
Yeah.
but it just shows, how sort of sanitized and protected we are from it.
Yeah.
But we also do have like respect for the dead, especially like as we just had Remembrance Day.
Mm.
Yeah.
And we understand that people have given their lives for our freedom, and every year we have this Remembrance Day service to remember those that had fallen, and even serving soldiers now. Even if they died in action or anything like that, then we got huge respect for people like that.
Mm-hmm. I think, yeah, but I think even like with Memorial Day, we're representing the ideal of they died, not individual die. So it's a mass memorial for people that, I mean, I was lucky enough that both my grandparents lived through the war. They fought in the war, but they both lived. So I was very fortunate of that as a child. Do you know what I mean? And they didn't really talk about it. It was sort of, so you just don't really talk about it, which is fine. I kind of understand that process for them is probably quite traumatic, what they lived through. Although if you listen to one of my granddads, he had a whale of a time in the army. But he would talk
my granddad, yeah.
They would talk about the fun bits of it, not the bad bits of it.
Yeah.
So when we do Memorial Day, and I find it incredibly moving. The last post and laying of the wreaths and stuff like that. I find that incredibly moving.
I think that is
But
more for if you don't know anyone that's been in these services,
yeah,
then Remembrance Day for you is to remember those that particular awful time and the amount of
yes,
people that died.
Yeah.
But if you have friends, because I've got a friend that, well, he's more my brother's friend, but I knew him. He died in Iraq. He was on a foot patrol, and there was a one of the jeeps or something blew up because they put a bomb in there, and he died from the wounds. So again, for Remembrance Day, I remember him.
Yeah.
Although I do understand, again, it's more about, well, it's not more about the wars and stuff, but it's about the people that died, and I particularly just remember him. That's sort of where I go with that.
Yeah. No, I can understand that. I think it's an incredibly important thing that we should all recognize that period in history, how awful it was, and the fact that our lives are like it today because of those people, and the innovation and courage and bravery of those people. But I'm not mourning a specific person. I'm mourning a period in history that was just freaking horrendous, both world wars, in any of those circumstances. So my attitude, I say it, and I'm like Richard, I've never seen a dead body.
Yeah.
No, not even in the Chapel of Rest, which is you can go view your relative in a Chapel of Rest over here before the funeral. You're laid to rest in the chapel. That if you want to, you can go and pay your last respects to the remains before the funeral. Because nowadays also we have cremation, whereas back in the day they would have burial. That's going to change as well in the 20th century. It's a more sanitary, clean, space-saving way of disposing of the remains, right? We're going to go more on to that next week in next week's show, but so it's important for some people for that closure to go and view that to view the body in the Chapel of Rest. I have never felt the need to do that.
Yeah, no, I haven't.
But then, having said that, I was very young when my grandparents passed, and I'm lucky enough to still have my parents.
Yeah. See, but then I'll say times have changed as well, because you know, going back to the 50s, 60s, and 70s, there was like huge respect for the dead. When someone had died and they're in the coffin and they're being, you got the procession through the streets to the crematorium or the church or whatever.
Yeah.
People used to stop and take
Yeah.
their hats off if they were wearing them.
Yeah.
And just stop. Everything around it stopped to let the procession through.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen too much now, but you still get the odd person doing that.
I do.
Yes, that's what I mean. You know, you do, but there's a lot of people that don't.
No, I agree. I totally
And I
agree.
think
They'll just carry on.
They're the ones that are ignoring it. Where the ones that actually stop are more respect of the dead.
I think it's respect for the emotions. You know, at the end of the day, I think the recognition that it's not the dead person you're respecting, it's the family that's following. You know, that the procession isn't just about the dead body, it's about the people. And those people are in mourning. They're at the worst time of their life, and don't need disrespect on any level. You know,
No,
that is just something that's normal. And for me, that's what that's about. It's respecting that emotional state those people are in, and it should be a respectful stage for people. The people should be respectful of that. I think there's lack of that. I think there's pressure on that, work-wise. Oh, you get 2 days, I think it is, to yeah, I think it's 2 days.
Yeah. I mean, when I've been called to people like people dead, particularly 2 people that I've seen dead, you know, and you've got to go in and you obviously respect the body. You know, you try and although one of them in particular, she was a little old lady, sadly, and she was terminally ill. So she was, I think she fell out of bed, if I remember rightly, and she tried climbing up the bedside cabinet. She died there, but by the time we got there, or she was found, rigor mortis had set in, so she was literally hugging this bedside cabinet.
Oh, bless her.
So we, you know, as responders at the time, we just picked her up, put her back into bed, made her a little bit more. Well, we was in our minds, it's like just making them more comfortable, but knowing full well they're dead, so they're not really bothered. But it was just more for the family. You know, the last thing they want to remember is you know, their nan or great nan like that. So we, you know, respectively put her into bed, covered her over just like she was asleep, basically. And then it's like we'd have to call the coroner.
I have a lot of respect for care workers and that industry who deal with the elderly and sick, you know, because I mean, there is something called a soul doula who help progress or prepare the person in whatever way they want, whatever religious or spiritual or whatever way, prepare yourself for passing over. And they do this various methods to make that passing easier for that person. And it's very discussion based to generally before they get to that point of what they want when they're in that transitional period between living and dying, to make their passing easier for everybody. You know, what music do they want played? What smells do they want around them? What, you know, who do they want around them? You know, that sort of thing. It's very progressional, and I like that idea. I do like that idea. I have a lot of respect for people who deal with people in those last stages of life. I think it's phenomenal. But we are actually coming to the end of the show.
All right.
That was quick.
Okay. That was a good
I know.
one.
Yeah, thoroughly interesting topic though. And if you look at the photographs, guys, don't look at them with horror or repulsion. Look at them that somebody has lost somebody and it's their only way of remembering them when you look at the post-mortem photographs. And it's just, it's cultural. It's very different per culture. The different views towards death is phenomenal across different cultures and how they progressed through from death masks to portraits to post-mortem photography through to belief in the afterlife and spirit photography. I think the whole subject is absolutely fascinating. Any news to report, guys?
None at the moment. We've still got a for sale. Make a brilliant Christmas present for somebody. That's available on our website at www.paranormalconcept.com/publications. We've got a few books on there that you can purchase. All brilliant Christmas presents, I must say.
I agree. On that note, join us next week. We are going to delve into the 7 great cemeteries of London. This is
looking forward to that one.
It's a fascinating topic, guys. Absolutely fascinating, this one. I'm really looking forward to doing this one. It's a show I've been meaning to do for about 5 years. Believe it or not.
Finally managed to get round to do it.
So
we got round to that pretty quick, didn't we?
On that note, say good night, guys.
Good night, guys.
Guys.